Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you how I made this asymmetric dress with a cutout on the neckline. For this dress, you need about 2.5 yards of Ankara fabric or any fabric of your choice. And if you're on the big side, you can use about 3 yards. If you're new here, thank you for tuning in, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Shoulder to the chest line is 8.5 inches, shoulder to the bust line is 11 inches, shoulder to the under bust is 14 inches, shoulder to the waistline is 18 inches, shoulder to the hip line is 26 inches, and shoulder to the full length of the dress is 40 inches. I'll go in with the shoulder measurements divided by 2 plus 0.5. For mine, it is 8 inches. I'll mark it on the shoulder line and also on the chest line, and I'll connect with a straight line. My pattern paper is on fold because of the style in front, so for this front pattern, my pattern paper is on fold. The next thing I'll do now is to go ahead and plot the neckline. I am using a neck width of 3.5 and a neck depth of 3 inches. I'll come down by 1.5 inches for the shoulder slant and I'll connect it back into the neckline. If you have been following my tutorials, you will know this is the normal thing I do when I'm drafting in my front pattern. I am going through this process step by step because of those that may be watching my video for the first time. I'll go in with the bust measurements divided by 4 and I'll mark it on the chest line. From the chest line, I'll go up by 3 inches, and from that 3 inches mark, I'll come out by 0.75 and I'll connect those 3 points together to form the armhole. The next thing I'll do now is to go to the waistline and mark the waist measurements divided by 4. I'm going to add 1.5 inches allowance for that to the waist measurement. On the hip line, I'll go ahead and mark the hip measurements divided by 4. For the full length, whatever I marked out on the hip line, I'll go ahead and deduct 1 inch from it and I'll mark it at the full length line. I'm connecting all those points together now with my curve. I'll go in with the bust span measurements divided by 2. For mine, it is 4 inches and I'll mark it on the waistline. I'll also mark it on the bust line and I'll connect with a ruler. Remember, we added 1.5 inches allowance for that to the waist measurement, so I'll go in by 0.75 on both sides of the dart leg on the waistline and I'll connect with a straight line to the bust point. I'll go ahead and extend the bust span measurements also to the hip line and I'll connect with a straight line. I'll come up by 2 inches and that is where the dart will end. So from the hip line, I'm coming up by 2 inches and that is where the dart will end. I'll just connect with a straight line like so to the waistline. I'll cut from the waistline now so that we can have the skirt part separate from the upper part. So I just cut it out from the waistline and I'll cut out the remaining part of the pattern that is not needed. The shoulder to the waistline for this front pattern is 18 inches. I have 2 inches allowance for bust darts inclusive in the 18 inches. So I'm just going to take in my bust dart from the bust line. I'll come down and measure 2 inches and I'll mark it straight to the bust point. The next thing I want to do now is to convert this basic pattern to a armhole princess dart pattern. And that is what we'll be using to cut out this neckline. First off, I'll go ahead now and tighten the underbust. My underbust measurement is 7 inches and I'll go ahead and mark that 7 inches and I'll measure what I have left from that point to the end of the line there and I'll divide what I have there on both sides of the underbust. I placed ½ inch on the side facing the center front and on the side front I placed 1 inch there and I'll just connect it straight to the waistline and I'll connect with a curve to the bust point. To connect the armhole princess line, from the shoulder slant, I'll mark 4 inches, and that is where the armhole princess line will start from. And I'll just connect it with my curve to the bust point. Then I'll go ahead and mark 1 inch to tighten the armhole so that we don't have any gaping on the armhole. I'll go ahead and mark 1 inch, and I'll also connect it to the bust point. Also, because we took in 1 inch there, we have to replace it back. So now you have to replace it back and you withdraw the armhole. I am cutting out now. Then after cutting, we can now alter the neckline to give us the asymmetric neckline. Go ahead and match the center front and the side front on the chest line together like you see me doing, and hold it with a masking tape. You need to determine where you want the shoulder to be, either on the left side or on the right side, because it is where you have the shoulder that you will have the sleeves. For me, I want the shoulder to be on the right side, and that is where the sleeves would be. Go ahead and place your curve like you see me doing and connect it from the neckline to meet the side armhole. I'll just cut out the part I don't need now, and that will be all for this front pattern. Shoulder to the chest line is 8.5 inches, shoulder to the waistline is 16 inches, shoulder to the hip line is 24 inches, and shoulder to the full length is 38 inches. The reason why there is a difference in the front length and the back length is because of the darts. You will notice a difference of 2 inches in both lengths. It is because of the bust darts. Remember that the shoulder to the waistline for the front is 18 inches, while from the shoulder to the waistline for the back is 16 inches. I have a zip allowance of 1.5 by the side of the paper, and the first thing I want to do is to tighten the center back. So on the waistline, I came in by 0.75, and that is to tighten the center back so that we don't have any bulge at the center back. So I'm just going to connect from that 0.75 straight to the top, and also I'll connect it to somewhere around the hip line, and I'll just connect my line with a black marker all the way down. From this new line we have now, I am going to mark the zip allowance of 1.5 inches again all the way down. I'll go in with the shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus 0.5. I'll mark it on the shoulder line and also on the chest line, and I'll connect with a ruler. The next thing to do now is to mark out the neckline. I'll use a neck width of 3.5 inches, same neck width I used for the front, and for the neck depth for the back, I'm also going to use 3 inches, and I'll connect with a curve. On the shoulder line, I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slant, and I'll connect it back into the neckline. I'll go ahead and mark the bust measurements divided by 4. I'll mark it on the chest line, and from the shoulder slant, I'll divide what I have left into 2 and I get the midpoint. At the midpoint, I'll come out by 0.25. I'll connect all those 3 points together to form the armhole. On the waistline, I'll go ahead and mark the waist measurement divided by 4, and I'll add 1 inch allowance for that. And on the hip line, I'll mark the hip measurement divided by 4. And also on the full length of the dress, whatever I have on the hip line, I'll deduct 1 from it and mark it on the full length, and I'll connect all those points together with my curve. On the waistline, I'll go in with the bust span measurements divided by 2. I'll also mark it on the chest line and also on the hip line, and I'll connect with a straight line. From the hip line, I'll come up by 2 inches and that is where the dart will end. And from the chest line, I'll come down by 1 inch and that is where the dart will start. So now I'll go in with ½ inch on both sides on the waistline and I'll connect with a straight line to all those points. I'll cut from the waistline now so that we can have the down part of this dress separate from the upper part. Just the same thing we did with the front pattern. And I'm just going to cut out the part I don't need on the skirt and set it aside. So I'm bringing the front pattern now, the front skirt pattern now, so that you can see that regardless of the difference in the length, the two is still matching together. It is the same length we have on the skirt part. Regardless of the difference in the front half length and the back length, the down part will still match. We used an armhole princess dart for the front, so I'm going to do the same thing to the back. From the shoulder slant, I came down by 4 inches and I'm going to connect with a curve to the chest line. I am cutting out the pattern now. After cutting out, I went ahead to use this first piece to cut out the second piece for the back so that we can have both pieces of the back complete. I'm just going to place the pattern on this new paper I have here and trace out all the lines I have on this one to the other one. So I'm just going to go in with my tracing wheel now and trace out the pattern I have on the one on top so that I can have the same lines on the paper under. I am done tracing now and I know that you can't see what I traced out, but I can see it. So I'm just going to go in with my ruler and marker now and make it more visible. Yeah, I noticed that the front part is still looking like it has a little bit of armhole, and note that this is an asymmetric neckline. The other part is not going to have a sleeve. So I'm just going to go in with my curve now and smoothing it out. So I'm just going to place my curve like you see me doing and smoothing it out a bit, and I'm just going to cut out that part I don't need. Now I'm going to place it on the back pattern so that we can have the same shape we have in front for the back. While placing your pattern, please make sure that the right side of the front is facing the right side of the back and just place it down like so. And I'm just going to trace out the shape I have on the neckline for the front and I'm just going to cut it out. But before I cut out, I decided to bring down the neckline for the back a little bit lower than the front. But just note that anything you are doing, both sides of the front and the back have to match up. So anything I'm doing, I'm still connecting it back to the armhole so that everything matches up on the side. I'm going to place both patterns together now and cut open through the armhole line to the armhole princess dart line. I'm just going to cut it open like you see me doing. I have transferred my patterns to fabric here, and these are my front pattern, and I added ½ inch allowance to the top and bottom, and for the part I'll be joining together to the center front I added ½ inch allowance, and for the side joining I added 1.5 inches. So go ahead and transfer your patterns to fabric and add all the necessary allowance to it. So now I'll go ahead and use this piece to cut out my lining. These are my back pieces. I have transferred them to fabric and I've also added the necessary allowance, ½ inch to the top and bottom, and for the side pieces I added ½ inch also, but for the side joining I added 1.5 inches. Please take note that for each of the patterns I cut out one piece each for each of the patterns. I'll go ahead now and use the fabric to cut out my lining. For the down part of the dress, that is the skirt part, I have transferred it to the fabric also, and I added 1.5 inches for the side joining, and for the down part I added 1.5 inches to fold at the hem, and also at the top I added ½ inch allowance. So go ahead now and notch your dart and take note of the length of the dart you'll be taking in on the skirt. If you don't want a dart on the skirt part, you can go ahead and close the dart first before transferring to fabric. I'll go ahead now and cut out the lining same way I cut out the fabric. This is the back piece, and also I have transferred to fabric. Same allowance I added to the front is what I also added to the back. Please notch the darts on the fabric and also take note of the length of the darts. So I'll go ahead now and use this one to cut out my lining also. These are the back pieces and I have cut out my lining. I added a soft interfacing to the lining. It is totally optional if you don't want to add interfacing to yours. I'll go ahead now and pin each of the pieces exactly the way I'll stitch it. So attach the side piece to the center back and do the same thing for the lining and also for the main fabric, and go ahead and join them together. These are my front pieces with the lining, and I also added interfacing to my lining. So now what I want to do now, I'll set the other side piece aside. The side that will have the shoulder is what I am going to go ahead and join first. I'll set aside the other side that does not have a shoulder joining, and I'll go ahead and join the side piece of the one that has the shoulder. I'll go ahead and join that first, and I'll bring it back and show you. I am done joining here, and this is what we have. I did the same thing for the lining. So now I'll go ahead and use the lining to turn the neckline just the way I am showing you now. I'll go ahead and turn it and I'll bring it back. So this is after I was done turning it with the lining, and I went ahead to top stitch on the lining. So what I'll do now is that I'll flip it to the wrong side so that I can mark out the cutout we'll be having in front of the top. You can use a pin to secure the lining and the fabric together so that it doesn't shift. So I'm just pinning it down now so that it doesn't shift. To mark out the keyhole now, I'm just going to come down from the shoulder by 6 inches, and from the side come out by 2.5 inches. From the side, you can do 2.5 or 3 inches. The length of the opening will be 2 inches on the shoulder part. And from the other side, I'm just going to come down by 3 inches from that side and connect from this part of the 6 inches to the other side. Please watch what I'm doing closely so that you can get it. I am connecting with a V on the upper part, while at the down part it's a straight line. I hope you get what I mean. I am trying to make the chalk visible so that you can see the markings clearly. So on the part where I have the chalk, I'm just going to go ahead and run a stitch around it like so. This is after I was done running the stitch, and I'm showing you what I have there on this side so that you can see what the stitch looks like. Now I'm cutting it open. Just cut around the stitch on the inside and just cut it out like you see me doing. Make sure to notch the corner so that by the time you flip it to the right side, it will stay flat. I'll turn it to the right side now so that we can see what we have. To finish up the front part of this top, I'll go ahead now to the sewing machine and show you what to do next. Please, you need to watch this part closely so that you can get what I am doing. So open up the fabric the way you see me doing and put in that small piece in and use the lining to cover it. And you're just going to run a stitch of about 1 inch in length, just the way you see me doing it now. Go ahead and run that stitch, and you're going to flip it back. You can see what we have now. We have successfully closed that small piece in between the front piece. So now I'm just running a stitch to secure that part with the lining. And the next thing I'll do now is to bring the other side piece so that we can join it together to complete the front set. But first, go ahead and run a stitch on this place I am showing you now, just to close the upper part of the side piece. Go ahead and run a stitch, and I'll notch it and I'll also top stitch on the lining. To join the side piece now, you're just going to secure the center front in between the side piece. Basically what I am trying to do here is to make sure that I have both the three pieces picked together while stitching. So you have to be patient with this part and stitch slowly so that you can have a nice curve on the bust part. So you have to be patient with this part and stitch slowly. I am going to flip it to the wrong side back so that I can notch the stitch I have there. You notch closely to the stitch and cut out any part that you feel is bulky. Cut it out and notch. It will help the bust area to relax well. You can also trim out any excess you have there. Trim it out. So these are my back pieces now. This was after I joined both the pieces together. So I'll go ahead now and use the lining to turn the neckline and also the zip area. I'll go ahead and do that now and I'll bring it back. I am done turning the back pieces with the lining now, the upper part of the back. I am just going to set it aside so that we can work on the down part of the back. So the first thing I'll do now is to go ahead and stitch the darts in place. After stitching the darts, I will use the lining to turn the down part of the skirt part. I'll use the lining to turn the hem and also use the lining to turn the zip area. I'll take the darts in on the main fabric and I'm also going to take the darts on the lining. For the front part, I'm just going to repeat the same process. That is, I'll take in the darts on both the main fabric and also on the lining. And after that, I'll go ahead and use the lining to turn the hem of the skirt. This was after I was done turning the hem with the lining, and I've also taken in my darts in place. So now I'll bring the upper part of the front, and what I want to do now is to join the upper part to the lower part. I'll just go ahead now and join with my half-inch allowance that I added. For the back, I'll do the same thing for the back also. I'll go ahead and join on the waistline with my half-inch allowance. This is after I was done joining the back, and this is what we have. I went ahead to fix in my zip, and I also created a slit of about 5 inches at the back. So go ahead and add your zip and also create your slit. The next thing I'll do now is to bring in the front so that we can join it on the sides. So now I will just place the back piece on the front like so and join on the shoulder first. I'll go ahead and join the shoulder together, and after joining the shoulder, I'll go ahead and use the 1.5 inches allowance I left on the sides to join both sides together. After joining, I went ahead to iron the sides properly, and I also ironed the shoulder. I also aim to overlock the raw edges on the inside. The next thing I want to do now is to fix in the sleeves for this dress. I have my basic sleeve pattern here. If you don't know how to cut a basic sleeve, I'll put the link in the description box so that you can know how I cut out mine. So now the length of the sleeve is 10.5 and I added my half-inch allowance to the top and bottom of the pattern. You have to take note of what you have on the armhole, and that is exactly what you're going to mark out on the sleeve. And for the down part of the sleeve, take in your round sleeve measurements and just connect like you see me doing. Go ahead and run a stitch there. The upper part of the sleeve is ready now, and the last thing is to cut out the flare part of the sleeve. My fabric is folded into 4 so that we can have a circle flare, a 360-degree flare. The full length of my sleeve is 24 inches. Since I already have 10.5 on the upper part, so what I have left to cut out for the down part is about 13.5. I'll add half-inch allowance to the top and bottom of that 13.5, and that means I'll be cutting out 14.5 as the length of the flare. For the upper part of the flare, I'll make sure that my round sleeve measurement, which is 12 inches, I divide it into 4. That is 3 inches. So whatever I'm going to have at the upper part will be 3 inches in width. So I'm just marking the 14.5 inches now. After marking, I'll just cut it out. I'll go ahead and join it together now, right sides facing each other, and I'll just stitch it round. You can secure with a pin first, then you go ahead and stitch. This is after I was done joining both together, and then I went ahead to just overlock the inside, and I overlocked the down part of the flare and I folded it once. So now the last thing is just to attach it to the dress. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe to my channel. Please turn on your notification bell so that you get notified anytime I upload a new video. Please follow me on Instagram at Stitchedbyesthy, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.